afternoon, everyone. My name is Tammy Martin.
And I'm John Martin.
And we are the founders of Young Black Leadership Alliance. YBLA is a nonprofit organization that builds young Black men and women into leaders starting in the 11th grade through college and into their early professional careers. Our mission is to build leaders who will make a positive impact in the world. It is also our vision to create a new reality for these young Black men and women so the world will see them as leaders, role models, and change agents they are. This vision is why these conversations are so important.
So, our fourth segment of community conversations with our wonderful partners at DHG. We want to thank DHG for starting the charge on this initiative and building an alliance with us to end racial injustice and inequality in the Black community.
Right.
We're using an acronym, STAND, to describe the initiative. STAND stands for seize the moment, talk to others, act on your biases, no more silence, and donate your resources. We invite you to stand with us to make a better tomorrow in the Charlotte community.
Absolutely. So to tell you a little bit more about this initiative, YBLA Community Conversations is about giving a voice to Black experiences, identifying racial disparities, providing solutions on ways you can help, and then moving to actions that will lead to system-level changes. Our first step in accomplishing these system-level changes are through small actions we all can do. Over the past 3 weeks, we made a call to action after each segment so we can start moving the dial towards change. Our target goal is having 2,020 actions towards bridging the gap of racial disparities. With your help, we have made some amazing progress towards our goal. We will have another call to action later in the segment, and we invite you to join us.
Over the past 3 weeks, we've had some informative conversations with our young men and young women of YBLA, and then last week we had the Black women of corporate America.
Yes, we did.
What an amazing conversation.
Yes.
If you missed any of these segments, you can see them all on our website at www.youngblackleadership.org/community-conversations.
Yes.
So today I have the honor of leading a conversation with some amazing Black men of corporate America.
Yeah.
You will get to hear their experiences as Black men as they navigate the ladder of corporate America. You will also have an opportunity to join us in this conversation by making comments in our chat. We have our chat leader today, Allie. Miss Allie will be managing the chat, so please respond. We would love to hear your thoughts during the conversation. Now let's get started.
Yes.
Gentlemen, would you please introduce yourself? First by name, your company, your role, and years of experience in the company. And then also give us one word that describes what it's like working in corporate America as a Black man. So we'll start with you, Dillon.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dillon Nimako. I work at Barings in the real estate debt department. I currently have 1 year of experience as I graduated from undergrad in 2019 at SUNY Oswego up in New York State. One word that I would describe the experience of being a Black man in corporate America so far in my career is definitely an awakening, at least in my perspective.
What was that word again, Dillon?
Awakening.
Awakening, okay.
Great. Hey guys, my name is Meshach, Cleary. I work for SPX Flow. I lead global SIOP and materials management for SPX Flow. So essentially, I lead a team that's responsible for fulfillment and inventory management for the company. I've been with SPX Flow a little bit over a year, and I've been in manufacturing supply chain for about 16 years now. I graduated from Temple University with a mechanical engineering degree, and I'm currently enrolled at Yale School of Management with an MBA.
And your one word?
My one word, I actually struggled to come up with one. I had two in mind, but I landed on intention.
Intention. Reg.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Reginald Bean. I serve as Vice President of Coaching Engagement with Coca-Cola, based here in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I manage the teammate experience for about 17,000 teammates. I would say my one word, 30 years corporate experience, 18 of those years with Consolidated. My one word to describe my journey will be unorthodox.
Unorthodox. Okay, awesome, Red.
Good morning, and I guess it's good afternoon, everyone. And John, thank you all for actually hosting this event. I think it's phenomenal what you all are doing in the community. My name is Ramone Gibbons, and I'm Vice President with Morgan Stanley Business Development, and I primarily manage about 200 FAs in their business development across North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. I've been in corporate America 17 years. I've been in the financial services now the last 8 years. And I would say my one word was intentional, Meshach, but now I have to change that to strategic.
Great minds, Ray, great minds.
Yes.
Great. Absolutely, absolutely. And then Eric, if you would finish this up there, sir.
All right, Eric Watson, executive consultant with the Kaleidoscope Group. Spent 35 years in corporate America in insurance, grocery retail, and oil and gas. And I'm currently doing executive coaching, CDO, CEO with the Kaleidoscope Group. And my one word would be ascending.
Ascending. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Awesome. So I think as we look across the spectrum, so the interesting thing that I really enjoy is that we have all different experiences. So I also worked in corporate America for over 25 years. And then when we think about it, we have over 100 years of experience on the phone, or excuse me, in this meeting. So I think it's neat. I think we all come from different perspectives. So I'm gonna ask you guys to unpack a little bit. So Reggie, you had unorthodox as yours. Can you give me just a little bit of, unpack that a little bit for me?
Sure. So if I think about my journey, starting off with, call it 7 years military experience, joining corporate America in a sales function, my undergraduate degrees in operations management, going from there, leading a team, leading our analytics and reporting space, then leading our market segmentation space, and then now in the people space. It's not this linear approach that many would think that they needed to get into to ascend, to use Eric's words, in corporate America. There's several lateral moves that I made. There's several projects that were not in the scope of my job description that I had a pleasure of working on. So when I say unorthodox, it was this linear process or progress throughout corporate America, and unorthodox because there was assignments and projects that I worked on that people scratched their head and said, well, why are you working on that? But for me, it was gaining incremental experiences that I can add value to. So that's why I would say describe it as unorthodox.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna ask you guys, I got a little bit of feedback on the phone. So if you're not talking, I'm gonna ask you to mute your phones. So thank you guys. And then I'm gonna go, Dillon. So Dillon, you've been on the job for less than a year. So you're the newbie just starting up, and you started us off by saying awakening. So give me a little bit more about that.
That's right, John. Thank you. So yeah, you're right. I've had about 1 year of experience at this point, and coming out of undergrad, and into the professional workplace, I began to notice, right away that I felt some sort of, I would want to say, a little bit more of an inferiority complex as to, when I started my job. And, I had to really look introspectively and ask myself, why? Why do I feel this way? Why do I feel like I'm not deserving? I mean, I graduated, pretty high up in my class, got good grades, was very well qualified for the position. And I began to realize that a lot of the reason why I felt that way was primarily due to just social conditioning that, I think a lot of Black men kind of see and experience from a young age. You kind of hear a lot of statistics, specifically, what we talked about on the phone, last night. And, you just begin to realize, this is kind of all ingrained in you from a young age. And then when you get to a professional workplace where, where you're asked to perform on a high level, you sometimes wonder if, you can achieve that success that you want for yourself, especially since not everybody in the room looks like you. And I think, that was kind of what was awakening for me starting a position in corporate America, was just kind of understanding the influences that made me feel the way that I feel.
So it's really interesting because last week when the ladies were talking about, I think they called it imposter syndrome, and they talked about how you get into a space that you're not comfortable with and you feel like you shouldn't be there. So it's kind of like, it's an interesting parallel to what they were talking about last week. And when you mentioned that, it spoke to me in that way as well. Anyone else have those feelings, or anyone else go through that on their job want to join in?
Yeah, I'll speak a little bit. I can certainly relate to that. What I would say is, when I chose the word intentional, I said I struggled with two, and the other word was lucky. And it was because not in sort of the sense of luck where you don't necessarily earn it, but when you think about luck in the sense of preparation meeting opportunity. So I land on intentional is just saying, I made a lot of intentional moves to be prepared for those opportunities that came into place. But to Dillon's point, for Black men, particularly over the last decade and a half, and certainly beyond that, with folks like Eric and Ray and others, those opportunities are rare. They come few and far between. So there's a certain level of pressure that you take on in terms of being able to make the most of that opportunity, and you also wonder, to your point, if you belong when you don't see that many people who look like you during that time. But I've been very intentional about every move that I made. I was very intentional about making sacrifices for the first, early portions of my career to make sure that I didn't miss out on any of those opportunities, to make sure that I maximize those.
Yeah, I would just add to that, both with Dillon and Reggie's initial thoughts. I moved 11 times. With each time I got an opportunity, but I also, early in my career as a trainee, I met the CEO. I worked for 7 CEOs, 5 of which I knew pretty close, 3 of which we sort of considered each other best of friends. 1 babysat my kids once. So those relationships gave me opportunity, and the word I used was to ascend. But in each one of those moves, it was a onesie twosie. I was the only first time happening. And that was creating, for one, a path for others to come behind me. But it also was a space that was somewhat lonesome at times. But being in a space where you got the CEO support gave me, some gratis to be comfortable there, as well as to achieve and move to the next level.
Yeah, so Reginald, I know in some of our conversations we've had, you talked about when you first became, a leader and a manager, and then that relationship with other leaders and managers in your group. Can you maybe expand a little bit back on that and how you felt and how you made that transition?
Yeah, so we talked about some of the struggles. A kid growing up in Detroit, during my military service, having to live abroad, and then coming back south and have really understanding the culture and the nuances of living in the South as a Black man, and some of the extracurricular activities that the leadership team would do as team building would all be centered around things that were not of interest to me. So I was in Columbia, South Carolina, and many of the managers would get together and they would go hunting, golfing, or go to NASCAR races, none of which I was participating in. And so I was the kind of the odd guy out in terms of building the equity with my peers. And so it was a challenge just trying to understand, okay, how do I insert myself to say, hey, I'm not interested in these things, but I am interested in building equity with a team. And so it was just this struggle that really Dillon pointed out of, how do I show up as my authentic self, but still be able to be a value add and contributing member to the leadership team.
John, I'd love to add something to what Reginald was saying. It is a term, social capital. And we all understand capital and what it means in terms of it being an asset, but your social capital is one of the things that I think that differentiates us in corporate America. And your social capital is those individuals who can speak for you when you're not in the room. And if you truly desire, as a Black man in corporate America, you desire to ascend, right? Great Dillon word. You desire to ascend to corporate America rankings, right? Boards and things like that. And your social capital has to be, as what we would say now, diverse. It can't just be just Black folks that you know at work, because there are many rooms that Black folks are not allowed in or are very seldom in. And so therefore decisions are being made. And so your social capital has to be extended as a Black male in corporate America. And that was one of the reasons why I chose the word intentional, because you do have to be intentional and strategic. Thanks, Meshach, and strategic in your thoughts about who knows you. And if it does mean that you get uncomfortable going to NASCAR, Reggie, that's what we have to do. And we have to figure out how do we go and learn about NASCAR and, not show up without earplugs because, you're not going to be able to talk, right? You have to know going in that you're going to need earplugs because this is a very loud race. And those are things that we learn and as we try to become, leaders in corporate America.
How do you learn that, right? I mean, because again, this is not innate information. So how do you, as a Black man in corporate America, it's not something that you normally do. You didn't grow up with that. So where do you get that from?
I would say from my perspective, my experience is you have to have a diversity in your background, right? So there are certain things that business school taught me, and then that was fine, right? Business school didn't teach me about social capital, but what it allowed me to do is go and be surrounded by individuals who had diversity of thought, diversity of actions, diversity of people, races, culture, all those things. And so I think that you learn by studying those individuals who are in corporate America. You should read their books about, Vernon Jordan, right, and his experience, right? There are things like that that you can read to learn some of the struggles that even if you don't agree with someone, right, it still doesn't mean you can't learn from their actions. And I think that as a Black male in corporate America, we learn by being humble first, right? Your humility allows you to go and research information. When you know everything, you never go and research. So I think that that's one of the ways you do it, John. You go and find others who are doing what you're doing, and you read about their lifespan, and you try to apply some of that.
Right, that's a great point. If it's okay, John, I'd like to add another one. And again, I think it's still around this theme of being intentional. I think seeking mentors and taking advantage of mentors is another piece of it. And what I would say is, through my career, I've been really fortunate to have some really great mentors who really put their arm around me and help me. And I also in my career have had the privilege to mentor others. And what I would say is, during the time that I spent recruiting, in different environments, during the time I spent mentoring in different environments, you'd be shocked by the number of people where you may extend, support or a hand and they just don't follow up, right? And so, what I would say is that, if you look, ahead of you within an organization and there's specific leaders where perhaps you have a real interest in, or maybe you aspire to be in those roles, reach out, take the risk, kind of get through some of those fears. And, what I recognize is that, because of, the dynamic that we enter, within corporate America, we limit ourselves with a lot of those fears and a lot of perceptions around, what we can and can't do. I would challenge us to take more risks and be a little bit more bold. And I would argue that you'd be surprised, the positive outcomes that come from those things. Most leaders, as they get to a certain point in their career, at a very minimum, they recognize they need more talented people to be successful, right? So anyone who's leading large organizations, at that point, you recognize that you do almost nothing on your own. You need talent, you need people. And, there's very few people, for whatever reason, that reach out to those leaders and really, try to learn from them, really try to tap into them. And that would be the other thing I would say. So I think, Ray is absolutely right in terms of reading and surrounding yourself, with other folks that might be like-minded. But the other thing that I would say is kind of take risks, identify, where you think you may want to be or where you think that is a good opportunity, and go reach out to the people in those positions.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. So one of the things I always felt, as a Black man in corporate America, I always felt like I was carrying kind of the weight of the world on my shoulders. And I felt like everything I did was always being scrutinized. Anyone else feel in that space? Anybody else have those experiences? And then can you explain those to us?
I would say, 30 years in corporate America, the one thing that I appreciate, young brothers like Meshach, Dillon, Ramone, Reggie, is that you got to control the narrative. You got to determine who you are. I think it's always important to know who you are, and you are a Black man, among other things. Know where you are, know the culture of that organization, that industry, even regionally. You didn't know what you want professionally, personally, and financially. So when you have those things, sort of locked in for yourself, then you're able to control the narrative of how people think and feel about you. And I love what Meshach said about, and Ramone about social capital. Getting to know the CEO wasn't an easy thing. They didn't come to me. I went to them. And when you go and reach out to them, you find out, I think Meshach said, well, they're wanting to have people meet them as much as you want to meet them. Because at that level, people don't always, come to them. So reaching out to other people, you'll find out as much of a challenge as you might have as a Black man or a Black person, feeling like, you're onesie, twosie, or you're lonesome. They're the same feelings, and they appreciate when you reach to them, and don't underestimate how much they learn from you about us, because there's probably no one else talking to them.
And yeah, Eric, if I may, I think that's a great point, about being authentic to yourself at the same time reaching out. One of the things I realized is, I have coworkers who, commonly share experiences about being in, predominantly white fraternities and the experience they share. And, obviously me being an athlete in college and, obviously not being in a white fraternity, that's something where you kind of have to learn how to adapt, while simultaneously being yourself, staying rigid to yourself, and understanding what value you can provide in a conversation like that, while, simultaneously staying authentic to your experiences. And it goes back to, reaching out and, being proactive in your stance and doing that, instead of, kind of taking the back seat and allowing people to talk around you instead of talking with you. If that makes sense.
If I can jump in, Eric, you mentioned something that, among other things that you mentioned, right? So understanding that among other things, we are Black men, but we're not monolithic. We can be multiple things at one time, right? So we can be authentic and excellent at the same time. We can be proclaimed to be blessed and bullish at the same time. So, we carry multiple things with us, but being authentic in who we are, because, people are learning from us, but we can be excellent at what we do as well. So John, I think to answer your question from my perspective is we do carry a lot because we have been through a lot, but just being aware of what you're carrying with you is important, right? So none of us are projects that need to be fixed, but just being aware of what we're carrying with us, because we can be multiple things at the same time.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think to that point, the other thing that I always feel like I'm carrying is, just I'm representing every other Black person behind me. And that's one of the things that, can be unnerving, but also can lift you up. And I'm wondering, if you guys in your meetings, in your thoughts, when you get up in the morning, do you have those same types of feelings and thoughts? Like you're the representative. If you mess this up, then someone else won't be able to step through that door. So do you guys go through that type of thought process? And then how do you deal with it if you do?
John, I'll start. The answer is absolutely, right? So as you get up in the morning, we're at these multinational organizations, right? We are in different countries, and we show up in an opportunity to speak on a call, for instance, right? So that means that we better be prepared, right? There is no winging it when because you do that one time and that's the last time that you do that. And so what I mean by that means that we have to be strategic or intentional about thinking ahead and being prepared for what it is that we are being called to do. Because unfortunately, when you look at the ranks, and Meshach, I think you have the statistic on CEOs, but when you look at the ranks of people who desire, first of all, who are in senior leadership, we're oftentimes less than 1% of that, right? So then everybody is looking at us as the example. Now, I think as Black men in corporate America, we have to also say sometimes that my thought is not every Black man's thought, right? And that's going to shock some people when you say that. They're going to be like, oh my gosh, what do you mean? I thought all you guys were the same. You're like, yes, but I thought all y'all were the same. And that's clearly not the case. And so sometimes when you have some of those candid conversations with folks, they're like, oh yeah, okay. And I'll give you a prime example. And this is this had occurred with one of my senior leaders, and we were talking about this George Floyd issue. And it's like, well, Ray, I just want to call and talk to you about, this incident, this murder that happened. And I said, hey, listen, my thoughts and my experiences are mine. George Floyd is George Floyd. It's a devastating murder that happened in America. absolutely, and was shown. I said, what you need to be as concerned about is your peer, Ray Gibbons, not coming home, right? Right, and that changed their mindset. So, I do think that it's okay that we do feel that burden, but it's also okay that we say to those individuals that are around us, hey, but this is Ray's thought. It's not a black man's thought. This is Ray's thought, and yours is yours.
And John, I think it's a challenge and an opportunity. I'm going to go back to Meshach's point about mentoring and sponsoring. We have a huge responsibility to sponsor people coming behind us. So one of the things, as I met each of those CEOs, I found another brother or sister to introduce that CEO to. Because one of the things that was really offensive once was when one of my bosses says, wow, and it was a young black female, she's not like you. Well, why does she have to be like me? I'm not the model. And I had to force him to get to know her on a personal level the way that he got to know me. I reached out to him, she didn't. He needed to reach out to her. But I think it's so important for us to understand we do have a responsibility to create a path for those coming behind them, but that's not a path that's going to be the same person, just like I am.
Yeah, if I can add just a tad bit to that, Eric, as we talk about mentorship and sponsorship, and Meshach pointed out, and Ray, you extended on it, but I also think it's important for us to create safe spaces for each other, and that's for me, that's one thing that I've learned from Eric, and just I've studied him younger in my career of, man, how does he navigate, how does he build equity with leaders? But really, how do you create safe space for people to just be? Because, we do carry that, we do carry the burden, whatever it is. We carry a burden, whether it's the responsibility for folks that are coming behind us, whether it's whatever that is, but just to be able to create a safe space for us as Black men to understand what each other may be dealing with, whether it's a call to reach out, whether it's a lunch, just to unload, right? So just to be able to create that safe space, because we're all carrying something with us, and it's not all negative, but we're all carrying something extra with us.
Yeah, Reggie, I think you're absolutely right on a few points. I think several companies, we have ERGs, employee resource groups, actually, and just started one at SPX Flow for African Americans and for Black people. And kind of really in the building stage of that, and I've been part of them at both Ingersoll Rand and General Electric, and it's been able to be a tremendous safe space, for us, as we navigate, corporate America. The other thing that I would say is that, I don't feel as much as a burden. I know that I carry the weight of it, but I'm empowered by it, and thankfully, for folks that blaze trails like Eric ahead of me, it is much less of a burden, for me. And we'll get into some of the stats that you talked about, Ray, but 3.2% of African Americans as senior leaders, and less than 1% as CEOs. That stat hasn't really changed a lot, which is an indication that something's still not working. But I am empowered by it. I am inspired by it, and to your point, I do take on the responsibility of being able to find more talented Black people and more talented, more diverse talent, because I feel like I'm better at it. You tend to recruit and you tend to find talent within your social environments, and I'm fortunate enough to have a diverse environment, and so I want to leverage that. And I feel like it gives me a competitive advantage, just like I feel like my adversity gives me a competitive advantage to be able to overcome things that other people can't.
Oh, that's a great point. So to some of the statistics that you mentioned, Meshach. So again, just really quick, to your point, Black men hold 0.06, and that's 0.06 of the CEO positions of Fortune 500 companies. And then they also are less than 3% of the executive jobs in all of Fortune 500 companies. So less than 3%. So with all the diversity, inclusion, and all the focus that it's been on, what is it going to take to move the needle? Because again, it's clearly not working. The data doesn't lie, right? So what can we do? What can be done? How do you move the needle? That's what I'm thinking about now. So any thoughts?
Well, I'll tell you, 30 years in corporate, most of that was in the D&I, 35 years in corporate, 30 years in the D&I space. There's a couple of things I want us to think about. It's an individual and an organizational challenge. So on an individual level, you got to be doing things. And I think, I'll be totally honest, as a CDO for most of my career, I clearly wasn't creating a sustainable path. I looked at making progress in the moment and getting outcomes, not impact. So when I look behind me, it wasn't sustainable progress. And when I say progress, not success, it's progress. So sustainability individually, and then on an organizational level, I don't think organizations have created something that's sustainable. So here's what I'd say about the past. We got to look to the future. And I think some of our young millennials, Xers, people like, they have a mindset of what can happen in the future, not what we did in the past. So here's two things, John, that I would say. Diversity and inclusion have been around for a while. Equity and belonging has come along for a reason. Equity because there were promises made and not kept, not just in history, but in organizations. And we made them to ourselves and then keep them. Belonging is about the cultures in our corporations haven't really changed. So when you see those numbers don't increase, not a progression, it's been a digression. We've digressed in spaces because we haven't changed the culture. We haven't provided the equity. Promises made and promises kept haven't happened in corporate America. So I think we owe a future of making those two things change. That would be my opinion.
And I love that you said that, and it resonates with me in a lot of ways. I think that if you just look at the stat mathematically, if at best it stayed flat over years, it means that for everyone that we hired, we also had folks that left, right? We also had folks that exited. And so, in the end, to your point, that net, there's no progress. And, when I think about, the corporations that I've been a part of, I think that there are a few issues. So one is, I think, my experience is that, Black people tend to plateau at kind of that early career place, and then they sort of bounce around to different companies, to find different opportunities, or they stay at the same companies. So that's one. So there's an issue in terms of being able to develop and promote, Black people, at that, I would say 10-year mark, plus or minus something, to a place where they can, continue to progress to senior leadership roles. The other one is recruiting and diverse recruiting, and I think that there's actually a couple of levels to that problem. So, I spent time at a few different companies now recruiting both at PWIs as well as HBCUs, and having conversations with senior leaders about, why they choose to invest money at recruiting at a PWI versus at an HBCU. And the consistent response is that, they're looking for the best talent regardless of what they look like, right? And I can understand that. Look, you're recruiting in supply chain. You may go to Michigan State or Penn State or Purdue, and you recognize that some of those universities may have the best supply chain schools, some of the best business schools, but they're not extremely diverse. Well, most corporations are going to say, like, look, they don't have an unlimited amount of people they can hire, right? So they want diversity, but they don't want to sacrifice performance for it, and they shouldn't, right? Rightfully so. I think that we have to do more, and us collectively, right? We have to do more to bridge that gap. And so I make personal decisions to recruit at HBCUs, and spend my time there, and not just recruit there, but actually connect with students, be able to, give them different knowledge, be able to, offer mentorship, be able to offer support, so that I can help bridge that gap for whatever they may be lacking, so that they're much more equipped. I'll take more chances on them, knowing that, hey, I might be able to control the outcome because I can put my arm around that person during that time, but that's not common. So, I think being able to increase the level of recruiting at diverse universities, as well as being able to look at the folks that are in those mid places in their career and helping them, unlock whatever they need to be able to get to those levels are two. And then the third one is absolutely the environment, where people are entering into. How do you make those environments more inclusive? How do you do, more unconscious bias trainings? And how do you start at the top of an organization? I think it's not reasonable to expect people from completely different cultures and completely different backgrounds to be able to just completely eliminate their biases. So you have to surround yourself with diversity so that you have people that are balancing each other out, right? So that you play your position and let other people, they play their positions, and collectively you make the best decisions possible. And so I think really it's those three things that, you know, the more we improve in each one of the root cause of this, and I think we can make sustainable improvement forward.
John, if you don't mind, I'd like to add a couple points to what's been said. I wrote down a couple things. How do we change the pendulum, right? So that there are more opportunities. I think the first thing is that we have to tell our stories to as many young people as we can. So what you're doing at YBLA, I'm a Boy Scout leader for Troop here in Charlotte. I try to get as many young men, African American men, Eagle Scouts as I can. Right? We have to tell our story because this thing doesn't happen by happenstance. And I think for whatever reason, young people now believe that we've arrived. And so therefore, if they go to school, if they, maintain, a good GPA or moderate GPA, guess what? Every opportunity is going to be available to them. And then they're going to find out that they'll get into a role in corporate America and nobody knows them, and they'll sit there for 5 years or 10 years and never grow in their career. And that's okay if that's what you desire, but many people desire more than that. And so if they don't know our stories, and so what you all are doing, helping us tell our stories, is exactly what I think how we make the pendulum change. I think we also have to be coachable in your role. When you desire to be in a role of corporate America, they're going to tell you times that you are less than, or you are not, or you are you're not equivalent, or you're not showing up. You did not meet expectations. And being coachable means that you find out what you did wrong and you go back and do those things correctly so that you don't get angry, right? You find out what you did wrong, and so that you can meet expectations or exceed expectations, right? So you have to be coachable while you're in your role. I think you have to do your role effectively before you can ever look to the next role. There's nobody going to promote you in corporate America, regardless of your race, if you're sucking in your current role. So understanding that. The other last thing that I'll say is that there are many people who are not comfortable telling their story, and they're not comfortable sitting in front of 200 people to say this is what I did. And those individuals, whatever race, we need to fund those people who are doing it, right? You think about a person like Martin Luther King or Malcolm X doing what they did for civil rights, right? They didn't have a job. Those things were funded, right? And so in order for us to excel, then we have to dig into our pockets and not be afraid to share our wealth. You either share your resources or you share your time. You got to choose one or two. And I think that those are the only way that we're going to make a turn.
Awesome points. So we're going to grab some, in a few minutes, we're going to grab some questions from the chat. So as we're doing that, I want to start shifting our conversation into solutions. So Ray and Meshach, you guys just started talking about solutions already. I guess first thing is, who mentored you? And then can you talk a little bit about the difference between mentoring and sponsoring? Because I think there is a clear difference between that. Dillon, I want to hear your voice, brother. Let me hear what you got.
Yeah, definitely. So as of right now, I've been getting a lot of mentorship from, African-American male in the firm who's probably about 12, 13 years older. And, I think it's great because, he has the perspective of, okay, I remember when I was 22 years old, sitting in your seat, first year analyst, like, this is kind of what you should do. This is what you shouldn't do. And this is how you should move in an organization given your skin color. And, I think that's extremely helpful because, as we've talked about a lot in this conversation, there's not a lot of us who can relate. And what I think one of the, very interesting things about 2020 is, given everything that's going on in terms of racial relations, we're starting to get a lot of executives who are beginning to try to understand that story and understand, okay, how is it being a young Black man in an organization? And okay, how do we promote talent, within, your mental complex, and how do we kind of understand where you're coming from, and how do we allow you to provide value to the table, being your age and your skin color. And I think those are all very interesting, things that are tidbits that are going on in 2020. And I think, the main difference between mentoring and sponsoring, just from my perspective, is mentoring is kind of, teaching somebody the ropes, whereas, kind of sponsoring is lifting more as you climb, allowing that person, kind of giving them opportunities in meetings to speak. kind of allowing them to share their perspective and allowing them to just, I guess, kind of answer the questions that a lot of people are asking instead of answering them yourself. I don't know if anyone wants to piggyback on that.
Yeah, for me, it's a pretty simple metric, John. Coaching, mentoring, and sponsoring are an escalation, and they all can happen at the same time. Coaching is talking to you, mentoring is talking with you, sponsoring is talking about you. And most time a sponsor talks about you when you're not around. So it's important to have all three, and your boss can be all three, but typically the person who talks about you is at a senior level when you're not around and creates opportunities for you to be successful.
And I think really that's one of the differences between, as Ray talked about social capital, but as you ascend up to positions in corporate America, you're going to have someone that speaks about you when you're not in the room. And I think really that's the difference. If you haven't made the relationships, you haven't made the connections with the executive levels, someone's going to be in the room advocating for someone else. And if you don't have someone else advocating for you, you lost. Right? And I think that's one of the things that we fail to realize as we work in corporate America. As Reg talked about, when people invite you out to events and want to get to know you better, but it's not your type of event, so you stay home, you've missed an opportunity. And I think that's one of the things where we miss. So I brought on Abuna, one of our ambassadors here, to grab some questions from the chat. So go ahead, sir.
Yes, sir. So one of the questions was mainly directed for Eric, Reggie, and Ray. They asked, what, if any, improvements in cultural disparities have you experienced during your career, and what still needs to change?
And if I heard that right, in cultural disparities, that was the question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, I think, and I'll just speak to, organizational culture. Meshach, mentioned the point around getting to know yourselves and knowing others. I don't know that we've made as much progress as we need around what I would call cultural competence. I don't know that we know enough about each other from experience, exposure, and just immersion in other cultures. If you lived in another country, you'll know it. But I think that's one of the areas that we haven't made as much progress. But if you listen to the gentleman on this call and other things, they've been in different companies, they've worked in different countries, been in the military and different experiences. That's where really the culture takes place and where people learn about our culture as well.
When you think about culture, organizational culture, you look at organizational culture, but then you look at local culture. Where's that organization based, right? So is there an office in San Paulo, California, and Charleston, West Virginia? Like, those are different cultural nuances. Or you have the culture within the organization, right? So, I'd say, what's the aspirational culture of the organization? Is it a culture of performance? Is it a relational culture? Is it a culture of passivity? So it depends on what those nuances are. But if we're talking cultures within our own journeys, I think oftentimes, to Eric's point, the disparities comes in the competency of knowing each other, and how each journey is different. We're not all the same, but that's not a one-way street, right? So understanding someone else's cultural nuances will help you in that process as well. So this culture of understanding and the nuances that come along, it in my opinion, it's just as much as work on us to understand where we are and how to navigate than it is in helping somebody else understanding us as well.
John, I'll quickly add. I mean, those are great points, but I'll add that this ability to have this open discussion around cultural differences is happening now, and many organizations are saying, "What can I do as a senior leader of an organization? And I want to hear your voice." And so I think that there have been some improvements. At Morgan Stanley, we added a core competency of diversity, right? So when an individual comes to work, for Morgan Stanley, a part of our core competency is also diversity and inclusion. And when you have an organization make those kinds of changes, I think that those are some of the improvements that are happening. And here's the thing: there is an economic reason for diversity, and so organizations either have to figure out how to do that. We have to be amenable to helping them, but organizations have to figure out how do we do that, because there are some economic reasons of why you want to have diversity and inclusion as a part of your business. So I think that there have been some great improvements.
Awesome.
That's amazing. All right. So another person asks, are any of you frustrated by actions that don't move the discussion forward, such as renaming the Dixie Chicks and other things like that? How can we replace actions that don't result in progress and change culture as needed?
Good question.
Wow. I mean, you know, some actions are performative, right? So they're performance based. You know, there's a, you know, renaming a group or those kind of things. But I look at things that truly move the needle, right? So, you know, Charlotte is still one of the counties in the country where there's still on the books in deeds that you can't sell your property. Take Myers Park, for example. You can't sell your property to somebody to somebody of an African American descent. Like that's on paper, that's on the deeds, right? So while I am grateful for the awareness and acknowledgement of a Black Lives Matter mural on a street, I would much rather us put our energy in changing policies that truly impact generational wealth within our country. And so again, some of it is, you know, some of it is performative and it does, you know, make a statement. But I'd much rather say, well, what impact can we make, i.e. the law on the books in Mecklenburg County that still prohibits some sale of some property to some people, because that truly impacts generations of wealth building opportunities.
Reggie, the operative word is impact. I think one of the probably missteps of diversity and inclusion in corporations, we work with outcomes. We increase some demographics at left, but what's the impact of the action that happens? And I again go back to, I think the answer is in the younger folks within our organization. They're more progressive, they're more aggressive. I have 7 millennial mentors that help me make sure I'm not thinking about the olden days. So I think we need the young progressive thinkers to help us understand how we have impact, not just get outcomes.
That's great. Great. So Dillon and Meshach, being the youngest on the phone here, we're going to leverage off of you guys. What are you guys thinking about in terms of where we're going? Because you guys are leaders too, right? So Dillon, you just started, Meshach, you're in for a little bit. Help us older gentlemen understand what we should be thinking about and the moves that we should be making.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dillon.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that's a great question. I think, you know, maybe some of the ways, you know, we can kind of think about moving the culture forward is, number one, being able to, I guess, access diverse talent through a lot of different mediums other than just going straight to recruiting events. You know, maybe it's about advocating, you know, the platform of your company, you know, via social media. Maybe it's about, you know, doing, you know, diverse things to get, you know, different outcomes, I guess would be, you know, just my initial thought.
Yeah, I think about it in a couple of different ways. You know, it actually, I think, builds off of, you know, the question around, you know, being frustrated around, you know, what I'll call tokens, you know, for lack of a better word, things that actually, you know, create outcomes. And it doesn't frustrate me because it doesn't surprise me. I do think that there's a fair amount of emotion behind kind of the journey that we're going through. And I think when emotion is also tied in it, it creates some level of distraction. So I think kind of the collective, we you know, lack some level of focus and what's most important, even within a town or city, right? Even within Mecklenburg, right? There's not even a collective view around, like, hey, look, these are the things, you know, 1, 2, 3 that would most like impact Black people, you know, in the greatest way. And you know, so imagine across a country, and then imagine across a country with access to social media, right? You know, it becomes very easy to get distracted, you know, and so that, you know, the outcomes aren't surprising me, But I think for one, you know, it requires focus, and I think that there's two places where at least I'm focused on. You know, one is, you know, one of those three elements about it, and trying to make real impact around diverse recruiting, around coaching, mentorship, and sponsorship within sort of early to middle career within corporate America, and then you know, putting in real effort around you know, educating, you know, our non-Black counterparts, you know, around, you know, unconscious bias and those things. So that's one piece of it. Then the other one is, to me, tied more to you know, an economic impact. So, you know, beyond just, you know, effort within corporate America, you know, I you know, spend time you know, building business within the North Carolina area, and looking for opportunities to partner with, you know, more African Americans who, you know, have, who are like-minded, to be able to progress there. And I think that there's opportunities as well in the financial side around how we bank. And, you know, I think the banking industry has a lot of influence around, you know, whether or not things are going to be able to change socially, and then kind of the social economic impact to it. And so my focus is starting to be there as I start to learn that space as well.
And yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I really like that point about how, you know, kind of originates in finance and banking. You know, one of the things I'm always thinking about is, you know, being in the real estate department, how can we work with more, you know, African American sponsors who are, you know, developing these properties, you know, because they're going to have a lot more consideration as to, you know, how to, you know, I guess, how to promote diversity within the I guess, the city that they're working in, and, you know, the area that they're building.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to move this conversation forward. So thank you guys for an amazing conversation. I'm going to bring in Miss Allie here. So for our call to action, so Eric, if you would put up the call to action slide to talk a little bit about the actions that we've had before and where we're going. So introducing the lovely Mrs. Allie.
Hello, everyone. So first, I would like to update us on our call to actions from previous conversations, and we have made 308 actions so far, which, yeah, that means we have accomplished 15% of our 2020 goal. I think that's pretty great. So on the slide, you'll see a petition from I think it's the week before last week's conversation. And if you haven't yet, please sign the petition to show your commitment and pledge to stand with Charlotte. And now moving on to our next call to action for this week. Exciting. What we want you guys to do for this week is to share facts on your social media. And how you can do this is to click the link on the slide, or scan the QR code, or you can just search up YBLA Leadership on Facebook. And what I want you guys to do is to scroll through the page, you know, like the post, but most importantly, share the post. You know, we want to get the word out there.
All right, so we're going to give you 2 minutes. We're going to give you guys 2 minutes to do that. So if you would do that now, so that way we can actually have the action and get it for next week. We're excited. We want to double the number. We're at 300. I'd love to be at 600 next week. But yeah, I feel that we can. So if you forward it on, so you're going to do it now?
Right now.
Go ahead and do it now. It's really, really simple. Again, you can use the code and scan the QR code. So that's what the young people tell me. You can actually scan the QR code on the screen, or go to the link on the screen and like our page, and then also like and share the post. So that, if you guys would do that, that would be amazing. As we are doing that, one last word, gentlemen, any last words you want to say before? Actually, I'm gonna bring Tammy in. So let me bring Tammy in and welcome as we work through the close. But can you guys give me one last word? So you had one word coming in, one word going out. So I'll give you a second to think about that. We will go from oldest to youngest in that respect. Most seasoned. How about that? Most seasoned to less seasoned.
Most wisdom.
Most wisdom. Yeah, there you go. Eric, with all that wisdom bubbling out of you, would you mind starting? Give me one word.
Yeah, I would say salt. No, I'm just kidding. That's the seasoning. In all seriousness, I would say 2 words: lead and learn.
Lead and learn. Thank you. Ray.
So I would say FYY. So FYY, that doesn't mean anything. But what it means is find your you. That's what I would say. Find your you.
Find your youth. All right, awesome.
I hear you.
Reg.
All right, so I'm gonna stick with the theme of not sticking with one word.
Appreciate it.
I'm going to say celebrate and educate. Make sure that we are celebrating each other and continue to educate ourselves to push ourselves forward. So celebrate and educate.
Awesome, awesome. And Meshach.
Well, I won't let you guys down then. I'll shift and I'll say be authentic. You know, the corporate America doesn't change with you bringing your authentic self into corporate America to be able to influence the future. Be authentic, take the risk, and 9 times out of 10, good things will come out of that.
Yeah, that was a lot of words. Go ahead, Dillon.
Yeah, I guess to finish it off.
You're the youngest. I'm sure you got one word for us, brother.
Yep, it's only one word on my part. I would definitely say embrace. You know, I mean, take every opportunity that you can. You know, especially when you're young like myself. You know, just make sure that you're embracing every opportunity, and despite your skin color, you're really taking advantage of anything you get.
Yeah. Well, guys, this has been an amazing conversation. I definitely appreciate all your support, all the work that you guys have done, all your years of experience and wisdom that you're willing to give to us. I know I've been changed, I've been impacted, so thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All righty. Well, as we close here, we want to thank everyone for joining our 4th segment of phase 1. We hope you enjoyed hearing the Black men of corporate America. I know I did. Awesome. Great job. We also want to thank our partners, DHG and their team, for all the support and assistance on this project. Next week, we will feature Black small business owners in Charlotte area as our guest panelists. So please tune in for next Tuesday to hear their perspectives.
I'm so excited about the Black businesses that we're going to be supporting next week. One of my favorite areas, so I'm looking forward to that. I would say for everybody, again, mind that we are looking for actions. We're looking to move this discussion forward.
Yes.
We didn't want to just have conversation. We wanted to have action with that. So 1, please continue to invite your circle.
Please.
2, sign a petition. And then 3, share the post. Share that forward. We'll be monitoring that. We look forward to seeing our actions increase towards our goal. Always, please follow us on social media, visit our website. And at the end, have a wonderful day. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Patient.